Trouble began when Dr. Femi, a Nigerian veterinarian living abroad, met Olami Posi online. He was humble and sincere, searching not for a flashy woman, but for a life partner with a good heart. For 6 months, he and Olami Posi spoke daily, growing closer through simple, meaningful conversations. Olamide watched with envy, mocking her sister for not demanding expensive gifts, insisting she was wasting a golden opportunity. But everything changed when a courier package arrived from abroad, containing a visa, flight ticket, and a letter confirming that Dr. Femi had arranged for Olami Posi to join him and marry him. As Olamide stared at the documents, a dark idea took root. Since they were identical, she could take her sister's place and claim the life meant for her. That evening, pretending to celebrate, Olamide drugged her sister's drink and locked her unconscious in a storeroom. She then transformed herself, removing her makeup, dressing modestly, and stepping fully into Olami Posi's identity. The next morning, she lied to their parents, who unsuspectingly blessed her journey. At the airport, her heart pounded, but her disguise worked, and she boarded the plane, thrilled at the life she believed she had stolen. However, her excitement slowly turned to confusion when she realized her destination was not London, but Helsinki, Finland. Still, she convinced herself it didn't matter, as long as wealth awaited her. Reality struck the moment she arrived. Instead of luxury, she was met with freezing cold, isolation, and a simple man dressed for harsh weather. Dr. Femi welcomed her warmly, but there were no flashy cars or glamorous city life, only a long journey to a remote farm in Lapland. There, surrounded by snow, animals, and silence, Olamide began to understand she had stepped into a life she neither expected nor wanted. The days that followed were nothing like the soft life she imagined. She woke early for prayers, struggled with physical labor, and failed at even basic tasks. Her lack of skills and sincerity became more obvious with each passing day. Everything fell apart when she attempted to cook a meal she had falsely claimed to master. The result was a complete disaster, exposing her lies. Dr. Femi, already suspicious, confronted her, pointing out the inconsistencies in her behavior. Before she could continue deceiving him, the truth arrived, an email from the real Olami Posi, proving that Olamide was an imposter who had locked her sister away. Faced with undeniable evidence, Olamide broke down and begged for a chance, but Dr. Femi revealed his own truth. He was actually from a wealthy family, but had chosen a simple life to find genuine love. Olami Posi had passed that test, but Olamide failed within days. Instead of calling the police, Dr. Femi chose a harsher consequence, sending her back home to face the shame she tried to escape. Her return to Ibadan was humiliating. Dressed in winter clothing under the hot sun, she became the subject of ridicule. When she finally reached home, she found her sister safe, composed, and dignified. A lawyer arrived with instructions to press charges, but Olami Posi intervened, choosing mercy over punishment. On one condition, Olamide would repay every expense by working in the hospital laundry. Stripped of her pride, she agreed. Weeks later, Dr. Femi returned, now openly living as the wealthy man he truly was. He reunited with Olami Posi, and their love flourished honestly. They married in a grand ceremony, while Olamide stood quietly in the background, serving guests, a reminder of the life she tried to steal. And whenever anyone asked her about going abroad, she simply shook her head and said that Nigeria was enough, because she had learned the hard way that not every opportunity is meant for you. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm after that. Olamide's days began before sunrise, not with scrolling through social media, but with the sound of buckets, soap, and scrubbing brushes in the hospital laundry. The same hands that once carefully applied expensive nails were now rough from washing stained bed sheets and uniforms. At first, she worked with resentment, muttering under her breath, blaming everyone but herself. But shame has a way of quieting pride. Each time she saw nurses walk past in their clean uniforms she helped wash, she was reminded of the sister whose life she tried to steal. Patients came and went, some healed, some not, and for the first time, Olamide began to understand what real work looked like. It was not glamorous, it was not praised online, but it mattered. Olami Posi, on the other hand, continued her work at the hospital with even greater respect from her colleagues. Word of what happened spread quietly, and many admired her not just for her skill, but for her compassion, even toward the sister who betrayed her. She never mocked Olamide, never brought up the past in anger. Instead, she focused on moving forward. Her relationship with Dr. Femi grew stronger, built on honesty and shared values rather than illusion. They spoke often about the future, this time with no secrets between them. As for Dr. Femi, his return to Nigeria marked a new chapter. He took up his position in Abuja, balancing his professional life with his commitment to Olami Posi. Though he now lived openly as a wealthy man, he remained the same humble person at heart. Those who met him were often surprised. His simplicity did not match his status, and that was exactly how he preferred it. He had seen what pretense could attract, and he had no interest in living that life again. Olamide's transformation did not happen overnight. There were days she wanted to quit, days she felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her chest. But slowly, something shifted. She began arriving at the laundry without being forced. She started doing her work properly, even helping others without being asked. One afternoon, an elderly patient thanked her for returning a clean blanket, and for the first time in a long while, Olamide felt something unfamiliar. Quiet pride, not the loud, showy kind she used to chase, but something deeper and steadier. Months later, during a small family gathering, Olamide sat quietly among relatives who once admired her boldness and now respected her silence. She no longer spoke of luxury or foreign dreams. Instead, she listened more than she talked. When her mother asked if she was tired of the laundry work, she simply smiled and said, "I am learning." And in that simple sentence was the biggest change of all. Meanwhile, Olami Posi and Dr. Femi's wedding became one of the most talked about events in Ibadan, not just because of its elegance, but because of the story behind it. It was a celebration not only of love, but of truth over deception, patience over greed. As music filled the air and guests laughed and danced, Olamide moved quietly between tables, serving food with humility. No one forced her to stay in the background. She chose it, understanding that some lessons are not erased, only carried forward. In time, the whispers faded, the mockery disappeared, and life continued. But one thing remained clear to everyone who knew their story. What is yours will come to you in its own time, and what is not yours can never truly be held, no matter how tightly you try to grab it. Time continued to move, steady and unforgiving, but also quietly generous to those willing to change. Olamide's punishment slowly turned into discipline, and discipline began to shape her into someone new. The laundry room no longer felt like a prison. It became a place where she rebuilt herself piece by piece. She learned how to wake up without complaints, how to complete tasks without being watched, and how to take responsibility without excuses. The noise of social media faded from her life, replaced by the rhythm of real work and real consequences. One morning, as she was sorting freshly washed uniforms, the head nurse walked in and watched her for a while. "You've changed," she said simply. Olamide paused, unsure how to respond. In the past, she would have taken it as an insult or sarcasm, but now she just nodded. Change, she had realized, was not something you announced. It was something people noticed. At home, the atmosphere softened. Her parents, once disappointed and hurt, began to see effort where there had once been arrogance. They no longer argued with her or tried to correct her at every turn. Instead, they observed quietly, allowing her actions to speak. Even Olami Posi treated her no differently than before, not with suspicion, not with superiority, but with calm acceptance. That, more than anything, humbled Olamide. Occasionally, she would hear news about her sister and Dr. Femi, their new home, their plans, their growing happiness. There was a time when such news would have filled her with jealousy, but now it brought something else. Understanding. She had chased a life she did not earn, and in doing so, almost destroyed the one she already had. That realization stayed with her, grounding her whenever old thoughts tried to return. One evening, after a particularly long day, Olamide sat outside the house, watching the sunset spread across the Ibadan sky. The air was warm, familiar, real. No filters, no edits, no performance. Just life as it was. Her mother sat beside her quietly. "Do you still want to travel abroad?" her mother asked gently. Olamide shook her head, a small smile forming. "If it is meant for me, it will come the right way." There was no bitterness in her voice, no regret heavy enough to break her, just acceptance. Not long after, an opportunity came, but not the kind she once dreamed of. The hospital announced they were offering basic training for support staff who wanted to grow into nursing assistants. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fast, but it was honest. When Olamide heard about it, she hesitated for a moment. The old version of herself would have laughed at the idea. The new version stepped forward and applied. When Olami Posi heard, she didn't celebrate loudly or make a big speech. She simply placed a hand on her sister's shoulder and said, "Start small. That's how everything real begins." Olamide nodded. This time, she understood. As the months passed, she attended classes, studied in the evenings, and worked during the day. It was exhausting, but for the first time in her life, her progress belonged to her. No shortcuts, no stolen paths, just effort and time. And somewhere in that journey, something unexpected happened. People began to trust her, not because of her looks, not because of who she pretended to be, but because of what she consistently did. Meanwhile, Olami Posi and Dr. Femi continued building their life together, steady, grounded, and genuine. Their story became less about drama and more about partnership, the kind that grows quietly but strongly. In the end, the tale of the Fajabi twins was no longer just a story of deception and disgrace. It became something deeper. A story of consequence, redemption, and the quiet power of choosing the right path, even after walking the wrong one. And in Ibadan, whenever people spoke about the twins, they no longer just compared who was better. They spoke about how one stayed true, and how the other finally learned to become true. Seasons changed, and with them, the pace of life for the Fajabi family softened into something steadier. The noise of the past no longer echoed as loudly, replaced by quiet routines and visible growth. Olamide was no longer recognized as the loud, flashy girl who once chased attention. People now knew her as someone dependable. She showed up early, stayed late, and asked questions when she didn't understand something. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress, and that was enough. Her training at the hospital became more demanding. She learned how to assist patients, how to clean wounds properly, how to follow instructions without cutting corners. The first time she helped calm a frightened patient, she froze for a second, but then remembered how her sister used to speak softly, with patience. She tried the same approach, and it worked. That small moment stayed with her. It wasn't about being praised, it was about being useful. At home, things were lighter. Laughter returned in small doses, during dinner, during shared chores, during quiet conversations that no longer turned into arguments. Their parents, once burdened with worry, now carried a sense of relief. They no longer feared what Olamide might become. They were beginning to see who she was becoming. Olami Posi watched all of this quietly. She never interfered too much, never hovered, never reminded Olamide of her past mistakes. She understood something important. Growth forced is rarely growth that lasts. Instead, she allowed her sister to find her own footing. But in moments where Olamide doubted herself, Olamiposi was there, not with long lectures, but with simple reassurance. One evening at the hospital, a senior nurse approached Olamide after her shift. "You've improved a lot," she said. "If you keep this up, you could go further than you think." Olamide didn't respond immediately. Compliments still felt unfamiliar, almost suspicious. But this time, she didn't brush it off. She simply said, "Thank you," and meant it. Meanwhile, life for Olamiposi and Dr. Femi continued to expand. Their home became a place people described as peaceful, not because nothing ever went wrong, but because everything was handled with understanding. Dr. Femi often traveled for work, but he always returned with the same calm presence that had first drawn Olamiposi to him. Their bond was no longer just about love, it was about trust that had been tested and proven. Occasionally, when Dr. Femi visited Ibadan, he would pass by the hospital. One day, as he walked through the corridor, he saw Olamide from a distance, assisting a patient with careful attention. He paused for a moment, not out of judgment but quiet acknowledgement. Then he continued walking. There was no need for words. Some changes speak for themselves. Months turned into a year. Olamide completed her basic training and earned a position as a nursing assistant. It wasn't the life she once imagined, but it was one she had built honestly. The first time she wore her simple uniform, she stood in front of the mirror, not with pride fueled by vanity, but with a quiet sense of achievement. For once, she wasn't pretending to be someone else. That evening, the family gathered for a small celebration. No loud music, no extravagant display, just food, smiles, and a shared understanding of how far things had come. Their mother looked at both daughters and shook her head gently, not in disappointment this time, but in amazement. "Same face," she said, "but now, same direction." Olamide smiled at that. It was the first time she felt truly aligned, not just with her family, but with herself. And so, the story that began with envy and deception settled into something far more meaningful. Not a perfect ending, but a truthful one. Because in the end, it wasn't about who traveled abroad, who married wealth, or who lived the softest life. It was about learning that a life built on honesty, no matter how simple, will always stand longer than one built on shortcuts. And in the quiet streets of Ibadan, the lesson remained, clear, steady, and unforgettable. What is yours will come to you without struggle, and what is not yours will only teach you the hard way before letting you go. Time went on, and Olamide's transformation became more than just a lesson, it became a reputation. People at the hospital started noticing the quiet determination behind her once flashy eyes. She still made mistakes, but she owned them, learning faster with each patient she assisted. Slowly, the whispers about the former influencer faded, replaced by respect for the young woman who scrubbed, cleaned, and cared with diligence. At home, the dynamics between the sisters softened into a delicate balance. Olamide no longer felt the need to compete for attention. Instead, she began asking Olamiposi for advice. Not to copy her life, but to understand how to navigate hers with honesty. Olamiposi, in turn, found satisfaction in guiding rather than controlling. Their laughter returned to the compound, softer and more genuine than before, no longer punctuated by envy, but by shared memories and quiet camaraderie. Dr. Femi remained a steady presence in Olamiposi's life, but he also noticed the subtle changes in Olamide. Once a girl who had tried to steal a life she wasn't ready for, she now had a patience and humility that made her more grounded. On rare occasions, he would comment on her progress, but without judgment, only acknowledgement. It was clear to him that lessons learned the hard way often stayed the longest. Even the neighborhood started seeing the difference. When Olamide walked through the market, people who once mocked her now nodded with a hint of respect. She no longer craved applause or online validation. The work itself, the small victories became enough. She learned that pride could be found in effort, not in image. The final test came during a routine hospital inspection. Olamide, tasked with managing part of the patient intake, handled a complicated case with composure. The senior nurse, impressed, whispered to Olamiposi, "She's come a long way." Truly. For Olamide, hearing those words was sweeter than any social media recognition, any foreign ticket, or any false glamour. By the end of that year, Olamide had not only earned her place at the hospital, but had also begun volunteering at local youth centers, quietly sharing her story of mistakes and growth. She became a living example that shortcuts never outlast patience and honesty. And so, in Ibadan, where once envy and ambition had caused chaos, a new rhythm settled. One sister lived her truth abroad, while the other reclaimed her own life at home. Both had learned in their own ways that the measure of a person is not in the glamour they chase, but in the integrity they carry. The story of the Fajabi twins, once marked by deceit and greed, now ended on a note of quiet redemption. Life, when lived honestly, has a way of correcting itself, and no shortcut can ever outshine genuine effort. They say what belongs to you will never pass you by, and what does not belong to you will burn your hands if you try to hold it by force. This is the story of two sisters, identical in face but opposite in spirit. This is the story of how greed booked a first-class ticket to disgrace. In the bustling town of Ibadan lived the Fijabi twins, identical, yet not in every way. First, there was Olami Posi. She was the kind of girl who treated the gatekeeper with the same respect she gave the landlord. She was a nurse at the general hospital, hardworking and gentle. Mama, you have headache. Father, touch my mama, take away this pain. Give her rest. Mama, drink this pepper soup. Make you sweat well by tomorrow, malaria go fear you run away. It smelled wonderful. She was the pride of her parents. Then there was Olamide. If Olami Posi was cool water, Olamide was kerosene waiting for a match. Olamide believed work was for people who were cursed. She spent her days on Instagram and TikTok, following celebrities and shouting Godwin at every picture of a private jet. She was a slay queen without a kingdom. While Olami Posi wore her nurse's uniform with dignity, Olamide wore clothes that gave the elders high blood pressure. They were identical. If they stood still and closed their mouths, you could not tell who was who. But the moment they spoke, the difference was clear. Olami Posi spoke with wisdom. Olamide spoke with attitude. The trouble started when Dr. Femi met Olami Posi online. Dr. Femi was a Nigerian veterinarian based abroad. Quiet and humble, he was looking for a wife with a good heart, not a slave queen who only loved money. He wanted a partner. He and Olami Posi had been talking for 6 months, video calling every night. Olami Posi fell in love with his kindness. Femi fell in love with her simplicity. Olamide, of course, was jealous. I don't know what you are doing with that man. Video calls for 6 months, not even a phone? He is a doctor abroad, calling you while you wear that ragged wrapper. If it were me, I would have asked for an iPhone 15 by now. Femi is a good man. We talk about the future, not phones. The future does not buy wigs. You are wasting a golden ticket. But Olamide didn't know how golden the ticket was until the DHL package arrived. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the DHL van pulled up to their compound. The delivery man handed a thick envelope to Olami Posi. Thank you. You're welcome. This is from London? Yes. Go ahead. Open it. Olamide watched like a hawk as Olami Posi opened it. Inside was a passport with a fresh visa, a plane ticket, and a letter. He has done it. Femi has arranged everything. We are getting married next month. The flight is this Saturday. He paid for everything. Spousal visa. Oh my God. You are going to the UK. He lives in a very quiet place. Peaceful. I can't wait to be his wife. Olamide looked at the passport. The photo was Olami Posi's, but because they were identical twins, it looked exactly like her. A dark, wicked thought planted itself in Olamide's mind. Why should Olami, with no fashion sense, go and enjoy the Queen's land? I am the one made for the soft life. I am the one who knows how to dress for winter fashion. I am the one who deserves the dollars and pounds. Congratulations, sister. We must celebrate. I'll handle dinner. Don't worry. You need to rest before your journey. Thank you, sister. That is very kind. If only she knew the kindness was a trap. That evening, Olamide ordered jollof rice since she couldn't cook, and Olami Posi's favorite drink, Zobo, chilled with plenty of ice. But inside Olami Posi's cup, Olamide had crushed 4 powerful sleeping tablets she bought from the chemist. Drink, sister, to your new life abroad. To our family. When I get there, I will make sure I send for you. You will not be sending for anybody, because you are not going anywhere. 30 minutes later, Olami Posi was slumped on the sofa, snoring heavily. Olamide moved quickly. She dragged her sister into the storeroom at the back of the house, a room they rarely used, filled with old yams and dusty boxes. She laid Olami Posi on a mat and locked the heavy padlock from the outside. Then the transformation began. Olamide went to Olami Posi's room. She packed the suitcase her sister had prepared. She took the passport, the ticket, even the engagement ring Femi had sent. She looked at herself in the mirror, washed off her heavy makeup, tied her hair back in a simple bun just like Olami Posi, and wore her modest dress. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who is the new Mrs. Femi? It is me. She told their parents early the next morning that Olami Posi had gone to visit an aunt in the next village to cool her head. The parents, used to her drama, believed the lie. They hugged the fake Olami and blessed her journey. Go well, my daughter. Greet Femi for us. I will, Mama. I will enjoy Femi very well. At the international airport in Lagos, Olamide was nervous. When the immigration officer looked at the passport and then at her heart hammered against her ribs. Yes, she said, lowering her eyes shyly, mimicking her sister. The officer stamped her passport. Safe journey. Olamide wanted to scream with joy. She walked to the boarding gate like she owned the place, took a selfie but didn't post it yet, not wanting anyone to track her. She looked at the boarding pass. Destination code, HEL. Hail? Or maybe Helsinki. Europe, Europe. Snow and dollars are fine. The flight was long with a connection in Frankfurt. Olamide drank the free wine, ate the plain food like a queen, dreamt of shopping, and planned how she would tell Femi she had changed, more outgoing, fashionable. He would have to accept it. In Frankfurt, she had a 3-hour layover, then boarded the second plane. As they flew north, the clouds below turned white. Snow, a sign of wealth. She smiled. But when the pilot announced descent, Olamide looked out the window. Endless trees and snow. No skyscrapers, no London eye. Helsinki, she whispered, tasting the name like expensive wine. The land of milk and honey. The moment the automatic doors of Vanta Airport slid open, honey turned to gall. The cold didn't touch her. It slapped her. She clutched her handbag. Teeth chattering, she walked into the arrivals hall expecting a chauffeur in a tuxedo with a Mercedes G-Wagon. Instead, she saw Femi, dressed like an Eskimo who had wrestled a bear, thick packer, heavy trousers, boots that had seen life. Hola, Femi. She froze. He engulfed her in a bear hug, smelling of pine wood, cold air, and musk. Darling, you are here. But why are you shivering? Ah, I told you to bring a thicker coat. Temperature is -15 today. -15? Where's the car? Turn on the heater. The truck is outside. Welcome to Finland, my love. The truck was a battered, reliable pickup. Ola climbed into the high passenger seat, her heart sinking. They drove into a forest that seemed endless. Femi, where are the shops, malls, restaurants? Oh, the city is for tourists. We are going home. The farm is in Lapland, further north, peaceful. Just us, the reindeer, and the huskies. Farm? Reindeer? Yes. Didn't I tell you last month? You said the city noise gave you headaches. At the cabin, Olamide realized her village people had followed her without visas. The log cabin was beautiful but isolated. No neighbors, no Uber. Silence. Inside it was warm thanks to a roaring fireplace. Furniture simple. Books, wooden chairs, rugs made from animal skin. I have a surprise, Femi said. One of the huskies, Luna, is pregnant due Saturday. You can help deliver the puppies, our first bonding activity. Olamide stared at her manicured nails. Bonding activity? She squeaked. That night, she did not sleep on a bed of roses. Femi, a devoted Christian, slept in a separate room. Saturday came. Olamide held a flashlight in a cold barn while Femi delivered the puppies. The smell was overwhelming. She screamed when asked to hold a bloody towel. Femi looked at her. Hola, you are a nurse. You see blood every day. Why act like a princess? The next days were not a honeymoon. They were orientation for a correctional facility. Olamide, queen of Ibado slay queens, reduced to farmhand. 4 a.m. alarm. Femi up in devotion. She groaned. Can we Zoom? We pray together, knees on the floor. Olamide dozed off. Shoveling snow was torture. Her expensive wig froze. The final straw was Thursday evening. Femi asked for Nigerian soup. She panicked, only knew how to boil noodles. She threw raw egusi, stockfish, unwashed crayfish, onions into boiling water, went to paint nails. 30 minutes later, she presented the watery soup. Femi's warm eyes turned cold. You don't know how to cook. You are terrified of blood. You sleep during prayers. Who are you? Olamide tried to lie. People change. I got it to surprise you. Femi's phone pinged. The real Olami Posey had finally sent an email. A picture of herself in Ibado, caption. The woman with you is my twin. She locked me up. I am here. Olamide collapsed. Femi said, You thought you were stealing a golden ticket, but you walked into this. You will work to pay back every kobo wasted on your lie. Laundry until debt is paid. 3 weeks later, Femi returned to Nigeria, past Olamide scrubbing laundry, and to Olami Posey waiting on the porch. Welcome home, she smiled. Olamide was at the back serving guests. Every time someone asked, When are you going abroad? She shook her head. Leave that abroad matter. Nigeria is sweet. No snow in Ibadan.